report presentation. Our consumer demographics. As Russia is considered as a city of education, our maximum people are tourists, mixedly students, and which are followed by businessmen and government employees. And other stakeholders were also present. They are like food vendors, rickshaw pullers, or other kind of people. The satisfaction analysis shows that security rately are fairly well, and 41.9% people actually conducted that the security is very good in that area, which means we don't need to be understanding the securities. The second one, the infrastructure, seating arrangement or amusement rated very poorly, over 60% of the dissatisfaction of each area. Conducting we actually need a very few improvement in the facilities and the services on those areas. Next, as we are conducting a community-based analysis, we need to understand that if those areas have any kind of community involvement, where we actually got to know that 89.6% of resources are engaged in community activities, and the involvement rate is very low, so suggesting a aggregated strategy to need the increase in engagement. So this is how our satisfaction analysis or quantitative analysis ends here. Now for the focus group discussion. Here we got some information about infrastructure, seating and water amusement. People actually suggested to convert community bonding in each kind of their preferences. The prefers infrastructure where a restaurant, resting places, resorts, or souvenir shops. Here, the souvenir shop actually will plays a very important role for tourists and community to create a bond among their people. They preferred deck chairs, folding chairs, or gardening chairs. Mostly prefer even a chair that can be moved, as other study areas actually goes under water for some time. And they can also elaborate the water level. So they actually want some sitting arrangement. They can move along with the sea levels. Water amusement, they highly prefer the floating market to encourage the tourist and community involvement, creating a very nice environment for the tourists to consider the community. And lastly, for water rights, as this is the riverine area, people usually suggest to encourage their communal boating community. Next is about qualitative analysis. Here we can actually see that most of the analysis actually conducted with collaboration with inclusive stakeholder, recognizing the benefits, avoid even adversarial models. They created a governance forms and participatory planning. The local captive and leadership scarcity are crucial to reduce the references external support. I guess the view is not that much appropriate to understand all the analysis. We are sorry for the technical difficulties. But all the references for different kind of literature actually created a framework where we have got to know that the cultural benefits are important, the involvement of peoples are also involvement, and also the interdependence between the stakeholders and the tourists are also important, which means we need to incorporate a policy where all the peoples are also included and they are feel important for the community, and every community should be benefited, which means we need to conduct a mutual benefits between them. And for that we need a targeted infrastructure upgrade, deep community involvement, different kinds of workshops and other things. And we need to present the cultural identity of Rajshahi City Corporation or Rajshahi cultures, and support by external research and leadership collaboration. Lastly, in conclusion, we need to say that Rajshahi is a very high tourism potential, conducting a very key challenges which lags behind the community involvement or preferences leading towards the obligatory reach and auxiliary reverses. The statistical backlog actually shows that there is a very low amount of community involvement, and we are recommending a tourism model conducting physical development with the social inclusion of cultural representation. And our way forward would be any kind of local authorities or decision makers to collaborate with the stakeholders in Rajshahi City Corporation to model a sustainable and inclusive river tourism in Bangladesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mahizabin. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. At this point of time, I would like to request all of our panelists, Dr. Anisha Nuri Kakun, she will be online with us. Dr. Muhammad Shakil Akhtar, sir, can you please take the seat? And we have Miss Charmelin with us from the University of Philippines. Yeah, a little bit about about the intro, I will start with our chair, session chair, Dr. Rashidul Mahmood Titumir sir. He is the professor of economics and former chairman of the Department of Development Studies, Dhaka University. In addition to academia, his career spanned a variety of settings, including government, think tanks, international organizations, and media. He is engaged in research for pioneering approaches to developmental public policies and innovative solutions on the ground. He has led numerous projects for diverse organizations, including government, development partners, international organizations at home and abroad. Then we have Dr. Mohammad Shakil Akhtar. He's one of the professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at BUET. His research interest includes urban structure, ICT, urban planning, urban management, disaster management, adaptation of climate change, and so many more. And we have Ms. Charmelin. She is assistant professor in the Department of Development Studies in the University of Philippines. And we have Anisha Nuri Kakun with us. She is a professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at Jahangirnagar University. She has a lot of things to say. I will just conclude by saying that she focuses on urban planning, climate-sensitive urban planning and design, environmental planning, and urban governance. So let's put a big hand to all these panelists, and I would like to request all our panelists on the stage and take your seat, please. Thank you. Thank you all presenters. Thank you all participants to these sessions. I'm humbled by saying that we are talking about equity, inclusiveness for the development and community engagement. And as of now, we know that we have a lot of institutional barriers, systemic barriers, unequal starting points in terms of equity. And in terms of inclusiveness, we have issues related to be welcomed in every spheres of our life. So there are a lot of segments in our societies, and they're kind of left behind. So how could we bring them into the development process? So here it comes, the idea of community engagement. So our distinguished panelists, they will talk about it, and they will shed a little light on the presentations we have heard so far. So I will be starting with Ms. Charmelin. If you could reflect from your understanding and the presentations we heard.
Thank you very much. Let me just start by saying that my reflection will focus first on tourism, which is basically my area of experience and expertise. And it was a very insightful report that the researchers have presented in coming up with the riverside community-based tourism. I think it is imperative that if we are to develop community-based type of tourism development, we have to understand that it goes beyond the resource upon which the tourism development would be anchored upon, which is the river for this part of the research, because then it gives rise to other development initiatives like that of the souvenir, like that of food and beverage, like that of additional income opportunities, say for river tour guides and giving in the destination. So the important takeaway here would be not to stop by proposing community-based type of tourism development, but to go even further, to look into a more careful planning into the change that perhaps tourism development might introduce to certain communities or localities in such a way that there might be some change in preferences. Say, for example, looking into the benefits of tourism development, they would now more likely engage in tourism activities rather than in more traditional livelihoods. So that's just for me right now. I'll give the floor to other panelists as well for their key takeaways.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Charmaline. Now, I would like to request Dr. Anisha Nuri Kakun. She is with us in online. Can you hear us? So, ma'am, if you could reflect regarding the session and kind of a key takeaway you can bring on to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, the moderator of this session. Actually, I'm sorry for not being able to present physically there due to some unavoidable situation. Actually, the title of this session is very important because now, after the movement of July, the question of equity and inclusion raised very strongly. So, first of all, I want to thank the keynote speaker for his excellent and informative presentation on the inclusion of low-income population in the community they serve. I really liked his discussions, and the findings was very good. After that, all the 3 papers presented up to now were excellent, very insightful and informative. I was very much interested on the paper presented, first of all, the child friendliness index development. That for our country, this side is, I think, this side is almost neglected. This side, child friendliness index, and based on their opinion, the children's opinion is very important. For this, I think the age group is very important. The different age group and gender is very important. The tool they used, community assessment tools, I think this is okay, and they should consider some issues which I didn't notice. For example, the walkability, connectivity, safety, and safety regarding the traffic lights, traffic exposure, and the proximity to the local services, so that the children can move from one place to another. Especially, they can go to the school by themselves, by walking or by cycling, etc. And the connectivity with the retail facilities, with the housing facility is very important, I think. So these issues could be included. The other sides are very nice, very excellent. I want to thank the authors and the presenters of that paper. Secondly, the second paper was on physical quality of life index. The physical quality of life index, which is also very, very nicely presented, that paper also. They considered it, actually, PQLI considered it 3 indicators: literacy rate, life expectancy, and the infant mortality rate. The regional variation in respect of inequalities, which was revealed from their research, should be minimized. And last of all, they should be given some recommendations. I was wondering, some generalized, I thought they should provide. And otherwise, the paper was very excellent, especially actually the physical quality of life index sometimes we depend on the economic indicators only. We measure the human well-being situation, human well-being index by the economic indicators like GDP. But this sort of research is very important, I think, nowadays. And the last paper up to now, the riverside community-based tourism development for the riverbank, it was very good. Podda Riverbank is a very potential site for tourism development. They did the focus group discussion. They included the children, female, and all groups of people. And I think for effective and successful tourism development, consumers' preferences must be taken into account. So up to now, this is my observations. Thank you, the moderator and all the panelists and all the presenters once again.
Thank you. A big hand for her. Dr. Anisha Nuri Kakun. We have with us Dr. Mohammad Shakil Akhtar, and I would request you if you could say a few words regarding the presentations and your takeaway, if there is any.
Thank you. With the permission of the chair, I would like to talk about it, but for the last minute it's very difficult because everybody already said everything. So it's very difficult to add new things. But one of the things I would just focus on that the title of this conference is actually Spatial Planning for Just Transition, and this session is very important for the word just, because when we are talking about justice for whom, and nowadays one issue is actually coming up about spatial justice. And when we are talking about inclusivity and spatial justice, the paper which were presented today was very much relevant. I would just I would not talk too much about this, but just give some light on my taking on the paper. For example, at the beginning, I just talk about the keynote speaker, and when he mentioned about there was around 40% of the people in Dhaka, Dhanmondi, is actually our low income. I was actually quite surprised. I was actually give a question mark: is it 40% of working or it's working population? But whatever this number is very big, and how we are going to include. These are the silent majority, and in all our plans, they are actually very much neglected. And when we are talking about spatial justice or equity or inclusion, because nowadays we are talking too much, we are just 5 years, not even 6 years, just 5 years away from finishing our SDG goal. And one of the issues of the SDG goal is leaving no one behind, one of the goals. And without this 40%, I do not know how we are achieving those goals. And the other thing which struck me about the paper, keynote paper, is the myth of affordability. Maybe we are mixing up affordability and capacity. I have capacity, it doesn't mean that it's affordable to me. I have to cut some clothes from other way to afford that one, because housing, food, these are basic needs. I have to provide that. So maybe I'm not, instead of eating 3 times, I'm taking 2 times food. Instead of going to doctor, I'm not going to doctor, going to the quack. So we have to look at that one. For the recommendation, I have my observation. I actually differ with the recommendation of the coordinator, but that's the beauty of planning. That's the way we could draw different conclusions, different recommendations from the same set of data. The 3 papers, these papers are student papers, so I actually appreciate. In their age, I would be quite afraid to sit in this audience to present. So I just appreciate that they have presented this paper. These 3 papers are quite interesting. I'm not expert of any of those. And from their presentation, I found that there is much more potential on child-friendly index, because this is another group who are completely neglected in our planning decision, our spatial settings nowadays. Even during lunch today, we were talking, and the divisional commissioner of Khulna was saying that when you are blaming your children for playing with mobile phones, the blame goes to you, because you did not keep any green field for them to play over there. They do not have any football field, so they need their recreation. So we have to check actually how we are planning, how our cities are became child friendly. The second one actually hit, proved light on that, the disparity of physical sorry for the disruption. That I actually wanted to know that which reason, because this is a presentation, so I did not have any document to look at the paper and other things. But it would have been interesting to know that which are the most deprived region of the country, and what we are going to do about it, because this very much is about the inclusion, special justice, and all other things. The last one, I think Ms. Chai has already mentioned about that one, tourism, and I know very little about tourism, so I'm not going to talk about that one. Thank you.
Excellent. The appreciation basically goes to all three presenters, because you are so relevant and you put a lot of effort to make it on. So these are, we appreciate this effort. And with this note, I would like to hand over my mic to the session chair, Dr. Rashid Al Mamun Titumir sir, because as long as he is from the economics background, he is from the development studies department, so he might have a lot of things beside planning issues, right? So we'd like to listen from him, and big hands together for Titumir sir, for his patience.
Thank you, Bangladesh Institute of Planners, for inviting me to speak a few words. What really made me feel quite enthusiastic and quite inspired by seeing those three presentations. I am so happy to have those presentations, and this is quite an inspiring moment, because we could see hope and future amid lot of despair. So I would like to congratulate those paper authors. And definitely we have benefited from the enlightened discussions that we just heard from our colleagues. I would like to touch three areas based upon the presentations made. One dealt with his housing. Second one was about regional disparities. Third one with respect to child, and the fourth one tourism. So when we are looking at it, what is core in it? As an urban planner or regional planner, we are talking about, as my colleague has mentioned, spatial justice. So how do we really look at it? There are three issues that should have been there, and that would allow us to understand the outcome. So there are elements that has been discussed here, like distributional justice, like the procedural justice, and the recognition justice. So that gives you some point, but that doesn't really ensure the outcome, which is equity, because we are talking about equity. And third, I am assuming that by transition we are looking at low carbon transition. But the other way is to look at, from a Bangladesh perspective, we are also in the continuum of transition, given the 2024 people's uprising. So when we put together the these categories, spatial justice, equity, and transition, how do we move forward? So the first point, that it's an age-old thing. When you plan through consultations, and these planning are taken care of by the local governments. So do we have people who are really looking at zoning requirements? That's basic, 101. Because I could see, if you are flying from one of those two busy airports in Tokyo, you will find a gentleman's house in that airport vicinity. Why? Because that gentleman holds a right that, okay, I am not giving away my land to have this airport. And the Japanese authorities have to really look at it and respect that. So what we don't see in terms of zoning requirement, the basic, which is why we are in state, because we have given certain authorities to the state in exchange for certain rights. So I would really like to see that we are following these zoning requirements. That's number one. Secondly, when we are talking about this, essentially we are talking about social security. And what kind of social security are we talking about? There are two types. One is a very misleading, but most of the people are mired in that misleading concept, which is, it appears as if that when we are talking about inclusion, so it sounds that a targeted approach would lead you to an inclusive society. But that's a theoretical mirage. Because without inclusive, universal, you can't really have an inclusive society. It sounds good because affirmative actions lead to a equity outcome. No, unfortunately, that's not the case. So if we are talking about housing, or if we are talking about a life cycle based system, as we are talking about child, and obviously we have to really talk about as well as age old when we are getting old. So this is the second area one has to really look at, that how do we want to see our social security system in terms of housing, in terms of our life cycle, because from birth to our last days, how do we really plan it, and what kind of social security system we are looking at it? The question would be, can we afford it? Yes, Bangladesh can afford it. So if someone says that Bangladesh cannot afford universal social security, we can do the maths. Because why? Because if you really look at our social safety net, this is mired in two errors: exclusion error and inclusion error. Because the person who is supposed to be included in the social safety net, he or she is not there, or who is supposed. So essentially this is a political and if you really look at, and if you bring these two under a one social security, and I will finish by, and this is a tragedy, and this is a irony, that we have seen Abu Said giving his life in Rangpur, but we also do not remember other side, Lord Beveridge, who is the founder of the British welfare system. He was also born in Rangpur. But ironically, Rangpur is the poorest region of Bangladesh. So look at the irony. So you have one of the martyred in Rangpur. Then you have the founder of the British welfare system in the post-Second World War era, was born in Rangpur. And then you have Rangpur, which is the a poorest in terms of cost of basic need understanding. So this point really points to the fundamental issue, that how do we deal this as a politics? Because it's essential when we are looking at the equity, when we are looking at the universal social security, we are essentially looking at politics. Because politics determines the budgetary outlay. So it's not economists decide about what would be the budgetary outlay. So that's why never fiscal policies and finance ministry is run by politicians, not by a technocrat. So what we need, and I'm sure this session would find its own way if these are really included into the political agenda. So thank you for listening. Again, I would really like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the young authors, and they have done fantastically well, and I'm sure they will maintain a good work, and they have a bright future, and we have a bright Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to open the floor for a couple of minutes, maybe not more than 5 minutes. If there are any pressing issues to be addressed or to be answered, we have our keynote speaker, we have our presenters, and we have our panelists. So anything related to our topic, you may speak up and you may discuss among us. Any question from the audience side? I think you had enough for this session. All right, thank you so much. With this note, we would like to conclude this session with the permission of our chair. Sir? Okay, so thank you for your patience. Thank you for your cooperation in this event. And particularly, I'd like to thank our panelists, our chair, all the speakers, distinguished panelists, and the heart of this session, our participants. Thank you so much. Looking forward. I just came across one thing I missed out because I was not instructed to do that. So we have to hand over the crest to our panelists, right? So, okay. This is for you. And And we'd like to take a photograph with our panelists. If you would like to come and join us, you can as well. And let's make a big crowd here, and it will look good, I guess. Come to the stage.